History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night.
You done fell right down that rabbit hole, so reality is questionable. Try, but you just can't let it go. These two right here put on a show. It's paranormal overload with southern hospitality. Haunted murder, mayhem, tip while discussing immortality.
Jerry was meant to have this rendezvous, and we all know that to be true. He was our axe behind the glass, and quite often a little crass. Through it all he was a man of care, and he and Tracy were quite the pair. We're all gonna miss you, Jerry. May your soul the angels carry.
Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to History Goes Bump Podcast. I am your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly. This is going to be a little different episode this week. It wasn't the one that we had planned. Last week, we lost someone who was very special to us. But he wasn't just special to us, he was special to a lot of people. Join us in remembering Jerry Paulley.
We want to start off thanking all of our military and civil servants all over the world, no matter which country you represent. Thanks to all you men, women, and service animals for everything you do to keep us safe on a regular basis.
You know that's true, guys. We love y'all so much. You are our rock, the one that keeps us safe, and there's just really no way to thank you enough. We try to, but...
I agree. Go hug a veteran today. Tell them
hell
you love
yeah,
them.
man. Go hug one, shake their hand, buy them dinner, anything you can do, just so they will know they are appreciated.
You know, there was always an interest there, because I can remember being, 10, 11 years old when the movie Halloween came out, and reading the book The Exorcist when I was like 10. And the movie had already been out for 4 or 5 years by the time I actually read the book. So I've always had an interest. But my first experiences with the paranormal came when I was 13, 14 years old. We moved into a house out in the suburbs. We'd always lived downtown at that point in Louisville, Kentucky. We moved out to the suburbs. And we lived in the house for about a year with really nothing happening. And my mother lost a grandparent who she was extremely close to. This was the man who raised her. So that was a father for all intent and purposes. And she went into a heavy state of depression. And from that point on, you can maybe call it poltergeist activity or something, because that's what triggered everything. We started to have several incidents happen in the house over about a 5-year period. Tracy, I was talking to a friend of mine.
You have a friend?
I have a few.
All right.
I have a few. Tracy, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. We need more Ukrainian summer camp paranormal stories.
Okay. You've said that 1,000 times.
And let that be a lesson to you young fellows out there. Don't be at your girlfriend's house when you're not supposed to be there, because you never know exactly what's going to happen. Could be a dad show up with a shotgun. Could be a ghost. You never know.
Could be. Either way, it's going to run your happy time. That's scary when you're trying to, getting ready to do the nasty and then,
Who said you're disgusing?
What?
Nobody said anything about doing the nasty. I'm sure they were at the house, 17-year-old boy hanging out with your girlfriend alone in the house. They were probably going to make like a picnic lunch or something of that nature.
Yeah.
It's my guess. Maybe drink a few soft drinks.
That could be true.
That's all I'm guessing would have happened.
Well, either way, it's always like kind of exciting, but then you're always like, oh my God, what if somebody walks in?
Like the first time we were together.
Oh my God, I know. Seriously.
Okay. I've seen so many people in our Facebook group that are struggling this week.
They have a lot of reasons to struggle. Everybody does. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of everything, a mixed bag of stuff. I mean, we know people that are struggling with relationships, struggling with money, struggling with their place of employment, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we just want to let people know that, let me start with this.
Get on the struggle bus. We'll help you.
It costs nothing to be nice to somebody.
No, it don't.
And let's start with doing that. Let's just, everybody be nice to each other. If you see somebody in a grocery store and they're behind you in line, start a conversation. Just say hi. You know, just little things like that mean the world to some people. You don't know if that person may have nobody at home to talk to.
True.
And then you saying something nice to them might brighten their day. Just don't take it for granted, because maybe your life is going good right now that everybody's life is, because it's not. It's just not.
A pit, a hole, a crater, a cavern. How does one describe what has been left behind by the loss of Jerry Paulley? On Sunday, November 24th, 2024, Jerry collapsed, and despite the thousands of prayers and the layers of positive energy sent his way, Jerry's time on this side of the veil came to an end 4 days later, on of all days, Thanksgiving Day. But that almost seems poetic, because so many of us were thankful that Jerry Paulley had been a part of our lives. Jerry wrote his life story in 2020. It took him a while to muster up the courage, because beneath the exterior that so many of us knew, this giving and selfless guy, there was some not-so-great stuff. Like so many of us, Jerry was a flawed human being. The title of his memoir really fit. From Hell to High Water, Demons, Depression, and Redemption. Jerry shared it all in this book. Warts and all. I remember when he finally decided to pull the trigger. He sent over the introduction to me to get an honest opinion, Kelly. Now, Jerry wasn't much of a reader, and he wasn't much of a writer. Anyone who saw his pages and pages of notes for an episode knows that he was more of a storyteller with bullet points.
This is true.
After I read the introduction, I thought, well, I can be his cheerleader, or I can guide him to put together a good read. So I opted to be honest, and I sent the introduction back telling him that I enjoyed it and that it left me intrigued to know more, but rewritten. I left it up to him if he chose to go with his original. 5 minutes later, he was asking what I would charge to help him write the book. So I answered some paltry sum because, if you charge free for things, people don't value it as much. And editing is not fun, and I couldn't imagine doing that for free. And we cranked that book out really fast. He was sending over like 2 or 3 chapters every couple of days. I couldn't believe how quickly he was writing. I was proud of the finished product, but even prouder of my friend for putting it all out there. I want to share a little bit from the introduction now. When I set out on the dream to create a podcast in 2016, I never would have imagined the lifeline it would become for people. I had hoped that the Hillbilly Horror Stories Podcast would get good ratings and have thousands of listeners, but what I hadn't planned on was having the opportunity to host live events and not only have them well attended, but some people even traveled internationally to attend and meet my wife Tracy and myself. The greatest surprise and most rewarding aspect over the last 4 years has been the number of people who've reached out to us to let us know how much the podcast has helped them cope. Some of these listeners were just going through a rough patch, a breakup, chronic illness, or losing their job. But others were battling with mental illness. Several people suffering from depression would reach out to us on a weekly basis because they had no one else to turn to, and we were family to them. Tracy and I love being that surrogate family for them. Several listeners have related that they decided to seek professional help because our podcast inspired them to seek that help. More importantly, many have said that they are still here today because of our empathy and compassion. These listeners were on the verge of suicide, and something we said caused them to reconsider their decision to end their life. It's always been important to us to talk about depression at the beginning of each episode and to share the suicide hotline and even our own personal cell phone numbers. The decision to do this has brought positive results and even led us to turn our Facebook group into a support group for listeners who are struggling with a variety of issues. This group became a safe place to get the support they needed, particularly if they had nowhere else to turn.
But before there was the Hillbilly Horror Stories podcast, there was the Rent Daddy.
I love you, Jerry Paulley. You know who it is. He's the Rent Daddy. Back to offend again. He's the Rent Daddy. know who it is. Politically incorrect. He's the Rent Daddy. You see the man with the pelicans. He's the Rent Daddy. He's the Rent Daddy!
Why did Jerry go by the Rent Daddy during his stand-up comedian career? He told the Louisville Limelight, "When I first started doing comedy, I was a manager in the rent-to-own industry. I worked for places like Rent-A-Center and Rentway. I had a very good reputation in the industry, and some of my former employees used to call me the Rent Daddy in fun because I was a tad bit cocky and a little defiant. It was kind of their take on The Godfather. It became my screen name on Louisville Mojo, and that's the way people came to know me. Therefore, when I was introduced locally at comedy clubs, it was always as Louisville Mojo's The Rent Daddy, and it stuck."
Jerry was what one would describe as a shock comedian, and that's really what he gravitated towards when he watched a comedy routine. Comedians like Anthony Jeselnik. He shared countless videos of some of his favorite comedy acts with me over the years. One of his comedy idols when he was first getting started was Richard Jeni. And Jerry loved Norm Macdonald and Bill Burr and Quinn Dale. I know for you, Kelly, that you guys had this kind of relationship where he was always trying to shock you with the things that he would say.
He would get that little smirk on his face, and you could see the mischievous twinkle in his eye. But you know what? I'd always kind of throw it right back at him. He didn't shock me, so I don't know if that disappointed him, but he would get a kick out of what I would say back.
I think he loved it because you didn't look like you would be the type to give it right back to him. And yeah, he would get that little mischievous look in his eye.
I can have a little wicked sense of humor myself.
Yes, you can. As we like to say, we have the minds of a couple of 13-year-old boys, so
This is true.
it went well.
When asked how he would describe his comedy, Jerry said, "If I use one word, it would be controversial. I grew up loving Rodney Dangerfield. He was a huge influence as far as style goes. He was the king of one-liners, and my average joke is 15 seconds. I would definitely say my style was patterned after him. Substance-wise, I pride myself on being anything but politically correct. I hate political correctness with every inch of my body and do everything I possibly can on stage to be politically incorrect. If I don't offend you at some point during the show, I didn't do my job." Other influences were Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and Andrew Dice Clay. You combine those three with Rodney Dangerfield, and you have the closest to my comedy routine as I can explain.
Anybody who followed the Hillbilly Horror Stories Instagram or Jerry on Facebook, and you would see the memes and things he would put up,
Indeed.
you could definitely see that sense of humor coming through. He did not mind being offensive on occasion, or a
True.
lot. That was all before Jerry came into my life. Another thing before I met Jerry was probably the best decision he ever made. In May of 2007, he asked Tracy to marry him.
Actually, I want to start off tonight by being serious. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, the most beautiful person I've ever met in my entire life, my girlfriend Tracy. I also want to say that, well, I had you up in front of everybody and have a mic in their hands. Brian Adams wrote in the song Heaven that once in your life you find someone that can turn your world around, and you're that person. The truth of the matter is that the minute you walked into my life, every hope and dream I ever had came true. I can't imagine spending one day the rest of my life without you. I know without a shadow of my doubt that you are my soul. I just want to tell you, for everybody, that I love you. Will you marry me?
Jerry and Tracy were married September 30th, 2007. And they were married for 17 years. That's a long time to put up with somebody, especially put up with Jerry.
And I'm sure she would have put up with him for as many years.
Yes, I know she would have. Another one of his great decisions was deciding to try his hand at this podcasting thing. Hillbilly Horror Stories launched on August 20th, 2016. I discovered it shortly thereafter, and I left a review in December 2016. Enjoy these hillbillies, 5 stars. This is a fun new show about scary, true ghost stories and the history behind them. The transition to the show being hosted by Jerry and his wife Tracy was the perfect move. Earlier shows sounded like a couple of guys talking at the bar, which is fine if you like crudeness and lots of cursing, but now the podcast feels like something everybody can sit down and enjoy together. Looking forward to more great stuff to come. Little did I know what that review would lead to. Then I invited Jerry and Tracy to join History Goes Bump on episode 185 to talk about Bobby Mackey's Music World. They both lived in Kentucky. They had both gone to Bobby Mackey's and knew it very well. And so I thought, what better people to have join us to talk about it. And then they invited me and my co-host at that time, which would have been my ex-wife Denise, to join them on their first anniversary episode.
All right, we're joined by some very special guests. I have Diane Student and Denise Moore-Meyer from History Goes Bump, one of Tracy and I's favorite podcasts.
Hey, guys. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
We're doing great. Nice to talk to you guys.
You guys are going to be on our true anniversary show for a very special reason. Your show was the very first show that mentioned us out of we've been on several shows since, but you guys were the first that even said anything. We had a mutual listener by the name of Anthony Alvarenga, who sent you guys a message. I don't expect you to remember because it's been back in January, I believe. And you guys read his response on the air, and he mentioned us, and you said you'd listen to his show, and it was pretty cool. And then from that time, point in time, you guys have been mentors to us, especially you, Diane.
Absolutely.
Anything and everything we've ever needed in this business, any kind of knowledge, you've been there to help out. And we greatly appreciate that. So we wouldn't consider having anybody else on our 1-year anniversary show but you guys.
Well, first of all, congratulations and big applause for you making it for a year. You guys have done a phenomenal job. Obviously, I was listening to you early on when you first were getting started and just getting your toes wet. And the growth that has come through the Hillbilly Horror Podcast has just been amazing. To see what you guys have built, what you've grown. You're building an amazing community behind you. So the fact that we were a little small part of that is very, very cool. And so we're honored to have you guys have us on here and to think of us as mentors.
Yeah, you guys, like I said, we can't thank you enough. And like I said, you ended up bringing us, not only did that mention kind of started getting us some listens that we hadn't had, but then, and I've told this story before on your show, but Diane left us a very favorable review, which she pointed out some things that we needed to know. Like, for example, that early on when it was Ricky and myself, that the show was a little more crude, not necessarily for everyone. And it sounded like, as I remember it, 2 guys sitting in a bar having a conversation. And then when Tracy came on board, it became a more for everybody type show. And that was really good feedback for us. And, I don't remember every single review. We've been lucky enough to have about 220 iTunes reviews, but that's one that will always stick out because it was the key to what we've been able to accomplish thus far. Those kind of tips and points of guidance is the way you guys have really helped us so much.
Yeah, and that really meant a lot to me. And I appreciate you guys, being behind us like that.
Well, you're very welcome. And as I said with that review, having Tracy as your partner on the podcast, it just added that little extra something that it wasn't missing because you had a really good show before. But like I said, it just gave you more of a general appeal to the rest of the world. And I believe if you're going to give somebody an honest review and you see somewhere that they could make a little bit of a change that might help, or they have made a change that you think is really good, be genuine and honest about it. And so that's just what I did.
Oh, well, thank you, honey. I appreciate it so much.
I'm glad you feel that way because I've got a couple of things that I wrote down I'd like to see you change about your show.
Excellent. First of all, if you could get rid of that irritating co-host, Denise.
Horrible.
We've heard it a few times, haven't we, Trace?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Well, and you know what, Tracy? Denise has heard the same thing. The one thing that we learned, and you guys have probably learned as well, is when those negative reviews start coming in, it feels like, you know what? I have finally arrived that people care enough to actually give a negative review. And it really is amazing just how personal some of those reviews can get. Mm-hmm. But don't ever let it bother you, Tracy, because I think you are fabulous. I love your laugh, and you really do add a lot. And it's neat to listen to the back and forth that you both have, because you've got Tracy who doesn't really know that much about the topic that you're discussing. And so it's neat to hear it from the perspective of somebody going, oh my God, you're kidding. Oh, wow. Holy cow.
For those of you who are teachers and mentors, you'll understand this adage or thought. You hope for the student to surpass you to do even bigger things. I was one of Jerry's mentors, and he did that big time. Hillbilly Horror Stories rocketed to the atmosphere, and Jerry in turn did for others what HGB had done for him. He mentored fledgling podcasts and invited other hosts to join him. He used his growing popularity to bring attention to issues in the paranormal community and to garner help for people in need. I believe Jerry found his redemption through, of all things, a podcast.
Definitely had a heart of gold.
An unlikely friendship began and deepened through the years. Jerry had helped hundreds of people through the years, literally saved lives because he understood what it was like to suffer from depression and to be suicidal. He always had an ear for anyone who asked. I used to tell him he was crazy, putting his phone number out there for people to just call him. I'm like, are you nuts?
That was just who he was.
It's exactly who he was. And I mean, he would talk for an hour or 2 hours to somebody who was in need. It blew my mind because I am not a social person. And I was like, I just can't imagine. We'll be sharing a bunch of comments and posts that people, those of you who are listening, have made about Jerry in that regard in just a moment. I was one of those people that Jerry helped through a difficult time in my life, and in return, I was a sounding board for him. We could tell each other anything, say anything, and there was no judgment, and we realized despite being completely different people, we actually had a ton in common. Jerry became my best friend, and I didn't use that term lightly. I'm an introvert and mostly a loner. I made friends with all the various groups in school, Kelly. You know, I hung out with the nerds, and I hung out with the druggies, and I hung out with the cheerleaders, and all the other popular kids, and then just the regular people. It was the 80s. So, you know, the Breakfast Club.
Exactly.
I was friends with the entire Breakfast Club. Let me put it that way. So I've never had a problem with that kind of thing. But friends really have just come and gone for me. But Jerry was different, and I feel pretty lost without him right now. I'm so glad that I was able to visit him in the ICU the day after he collapsed, because I left things with him exactly as I would have wanted. I'm a big believer in always making sure that people know how you feel about them. You know, having the last thing you say that you love them. And that's exactly what we did. We clasped hands as I was getting ready to go, and I just looked at him and I said, I love you, Jerry, and I'll see you soon. Because I was expecting to visit him some more in the hospital, and I was expecting him to be out of there in a week. That's what he did. He always just bounced back, and he was out of the hospital, and it was like it was nothing. It really was like it was nothing, too. I'm not just using that word loosely, because the last time that Jerry was in the ICU, he had coded for quite a while, and they had to get him back.
And he was so blasé about it. He's like, nah.
Yeah, he was saying something else to me and just kind of brushing over it. And I went, Jerry, you died.
Exactly.
I think he was just like not understanding why people had reacted the way they had or something. And I went, Jerry, you died.
Well, and perhaps he didn't want people to focus on that because it was bothering him, but he didn't want to let on.
Maybe, but I really do think he just would, he would just keep going. He was a very driven man.
Energizer Bunny.
Yes.
Keep on keeping on.
I actually told him that when he was in the hospital. I'm like, you are definitely the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going and going. It was interesting because once I said that to him, he paused. I think that kind of got through to him because it was after that he did start talking more about the fact that, I did die. It was very serious. And I think he didn't quite get it until he had a friend say, you died. And so I reacted to it in that way. When Tracy called me Thanksgiving morning and gave me the news that Jerry had passed, we both just wept. It's a big loss.
Yeah, all three of us were.
Yeah. I'm glad you could hear through the phone because I don't think I could have told you.
No, I could hear everything.
I was not really able to talk. I mean, I think that's why Tracy and I were just both kind of crying because I'm like, not only do I not know what to say, but I couldn't really talk. I'll always miss him and I'll always be looking. And I'll always be looking for signs that he is coming through the veil. I think he gave one of me those signs that very morning. Anybody who knows me knows that I love to go running. That's how I keep myself in shape. And it's also something, for me, it's a spiritual experience. It's kind of where I go to meet God. I don't go to church and that kind of thing. It's just kind of me and God out there, and I enjoy the nature. And we have a little kind of park setting here in our neighborhood that I won't go through unless it's light out because we have wild animals and, of course, there's humans, and it's not really safe for a lot of women to go jogging by themselves in wooded areas. And I was going through that area because it was light out. And I came to this clearing that they've cut out that I'm hoping they put a dog run into. And for only the second time that I've been out running in my entire lifetime, I saw a coyote. And it was coming across the clearing. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful. Usually when I've seen coyotes out like in fields when I'm driving or something, they look kind of scraggly.
Right.
This one, big, beautiful coyote, very healthy, big bushy tail, because when I first saw it, I immediately thought, oh no, somebody's dog got out. And then I realized what it was. And then my brain went, oh God, that's a coyote. And I'm out here by myself because they are a wild animal that could attack you if they want to. And it was trotting across that clearing towards the wooded area. And it paused just before it got to the wooded area. It turned and we locked eyes with each other. And then it went off into the woods. Once I got over the, am I going to die? I went, Jerry, was that you? And it was actually perfect because the side of Jerry that I knew, he was definitely a trickster. Not just because he was a comedian and liked to tell a joke or, liked to clown around, which naturally you would think of a trickster, but there was a side to Jerry that definitely fit for me.
Yeah, I know.
I knew Jerry in other ways that people don't know necessarily. And for me, it was just perfect. And I have no doubt that that was him giving me some kind of sign from the other side.
I agree.
We wanted to share a little bit about what so many of you have said about Jerry as well. The amount of love pouring out for Tracy and his family and just gratitude to Jerry. I hope, we don't know what happens when you cross over into that other side. And we used to joke with Jerry. I remember the one time we were out, and we might have even done it when we were recording together. But I'd made an offhand comment like, well, when we get to the other side, we're probably not even going to care about, what it was like and communicating that back to people.
And Jerry said, well, I'm going to care. So hopefully he'll come back and mess around and
let us know. What is it like on the other side?
Pull some pranks on us.
As a matter of fact, this morning, Kelly had a really rough phone call with an owner yesterday who was just so horrific to her that it left her in tears. And I wanted to go throat punch somebody. And when she woke up this morning, she's like, I'm still mad at that owner about what happened. And so I just said, well, Jerry, you're in the afterlife now. Do something.
This is true.
I'm thinking, go flatten a tire or something.
Yeah.
Lauren wrote, the world lost a wonderful man and podcast host, Jerry Paulley. I only got the pleasure of meeting him once, and it was a memory of a lifetime. He was one of the most warmest people I've ever met, and he made you feel like you were an old friend. I know I barely know him, but it definitely struck a chord hearing of his passing. My heart and prayers go out to his family and his lovely wife, Tracy. And that's how a lot of people felt. A lot of people were like, I didn't really know him, but from what I did know.
Yeah, well, he made you feel like you knew him personally, even if you had never met him. He just had that warmth that came across in the podcast.
Katerina wrote, devastating, beyond devastating. The world has lost a man that has impacted so many lives and brought so many of us together. Jerry was just about as special as a person could be, kind and caring beyond compare. He's leaving behind a hole in so many hearts that can never be filled. Jerry, you're loved and so incredibly missed by thousands of us. Tracy, we love you. We will be here with you as long as you need for us to be. His sister, Rebecca, shared, my heart is broken. My sweet loving brother, Jerry Paulley, passed away, and I'm so lost. You were the best brother anyone could have asked for. All the talks and text messages we always had. I turn to you always for advice. I will miss you so much. I love you, big brother. Tell Mama hi for me. Sherry was encouraging people to keep the family of Jerry Paulley in their thoughts and prayers as he passed away this morning and is celebrating Thanksgiving in heaven. Thanks for all of your stories, Jerry and Tracy, and mostly for sharing your hearts with us. At the beginning of every podcast, you always showed appreciation and prayers for our troops, first responders, EMTs, and veterans. Your platform for helping anyone who was struggling was incredible. Your followers are hurting today, but as you always bragged about them, we will continue your platform and reach out to anyone who needs an ear. Rest now, Jerry, but watch over Tracy. Michelle wrote, very few times in this life do you get to meet genuinely kind and caring people. From the first time I met Jerry Paulley and Tracy Paulley in person, I knew that these were two of those people. Jerry passed away early this morning, and it just hasn't seemed real. From first finding their podcast in 2019 and actually meeting them in person for the first time in Texas, little did I or Jerry know just how much his friendship would mean to me. I've met so many amazing people because of Jerry and Tracy, it's hard to put into words my gratitude. The world will definitely be a little dimmer without his lightheartedness. His comedy and sense of humor were unmatched. My heart is heavy and saddened with his passing, but I know he is no longer suffering here, but is at peace in the arms of Jesus. Jerry was most certainly one of a kind and will be missed terribly. And everybody that wrote stuff is they lost a friend, whether they knew him well or not.
Exactly.
Sarah Dead wrote, in 2018, I started listening to podcasts and found this great little, at that time, now it has millions of listeners, channel that talked about interesting topics. But more than the topics were the two people behind the mic, Jerry and Tracy. They quickly became my friends. We chatted on their site and he interviewed me a few times on the show. When I found out they lived in Kentucky right behind my favorite hotel, it was in no time at all before I was visiting when I drove south. Jerry was funny and kind. He was proud of his projects like the beautiful pond he built at their home and proud to be married to the woman he chose to spend the rest of his life with. Jerry loved Tracy and there was never a question about that. They were each other's lives. This man, along with his wife, took on important tasks of spreading suicide awareness and supporting our uniformed men, women, and dogs. They've helped more people stay on this earth than can be counted. Jerry was a connector. Through his podcast, he was able to start, support, and grow countless other podcasts by bringing them on the show, giving them great advice, and just being a really good friend. Not only was he a connector for podcasts, but he was a connector of people. I've been truly reminded over the last week of how many friends and wonderful people in my life that all started from knowing Jerry and Tracy. I will always be indebted to them both for the amazing friends I have in my life. He was larger than life, loved deeply, and was caring. He tried to have a tough exterior, probably from his stand-up comedy days, but you knew he truly cared. My friend, please watch over us. Help us with our grief. Know that your bride will be supported and loved. Jerry, I remember. You did it your way. Love you forever. Enjoy your reunion with Ninja. And for those that don't know, Ninja was one of Jerry's dogs that had passed on before him. Valentina wrote, I don't post much, but I'm so saddened by Jerry's loss. He definitely leaves a huge legacy. This group has helped so many, myself included, providing a safe space to share thoughts, fears, hopes, and worries, and his memory will shine on. Thank you, Jerry, for creating HHS and providing so many hours of entertainment, paranormal insights, and great humor. Wherever you are, I hope you still get to do what you love the most. Tracy, I wish I had the right words to comfort you, but rest assured you and your family will be in my prayers.
I bet they have comedy clubs in heaven, but he'll have to clean up his act.
Yeah, they might keep him outside the gate until he gets done with that. Amanda wrote, I started listening to Hillbilly Horror Stories way back around 2016 because Tony Bruschi from Real Ghost Stories Online recommended the show. I was instantly hooked because Jerry and later Tracy filled in when his friend could no longer host. He said his friend had to go take care of all of his kids. This was tongue-in-cheek and really made me giggle. I'm going to miss hearing Jerry's voice. I also loved hearing Ninja snoring in the background. Ty wrote, working nights, there are more times than I can count where Uncle Jerry and Aunt Tracy were right there with me, bantering back and forth, making each other laugh. I swear I could sometimes hear eyes rolling from one to the other, always loving each other.
I love that.
Yeah, and just putting love out into the world. That's their gift. They put love into the world and made a safe place for all of us misfits. Jerry, be at peace. Anna had shared that one night she was in a mental health crisis and Jerry was there and talked her through it, and she survived her suicide attempt. Just another one of those things that Jerry was there for. B wrote, 2 years ago, I was in intensive outpatient therapy for my anxiety and depression. At one point, we had to share about those in our support system. The counselors were a bit surprised when I said, Hillbilly Horror Stories. Jerry really reached out to those struggling with mental health issues as well as others going through difficult times. That was always the main reason I liked and respected him. Thank you, Jerry. Jackie had written, I was in a very bad low spot in my life. I had put something up on Facebook about my birthday coming up and I had no one to celebrate it with. I had no money. Jerry and I talked privately about what was going on in my life. He invited me out to see him and Tracy, paid for my gas and my hotel room, and treated me to an evening at Bobby Mackey's, and I had a private tour. It was absolutely amazing. I will never forget his generosity and compassion. He and Tracy will be in my heart forever. Tanya said, 1, he called me Princess, and I found a cute little bracelet that says Princess on it, so every time I wear it, I will remember one of my closest friends. 2, I was able to meet my family for the first time a few years ago due to my aunt passing away in Ohio. Jerry and Tracy drove 2.5 hours from Kentucky just to meet up with me, our first meeting, and spend a few hours together. We went to lunch and they took me to Bobby Mackey's. It meant the world to me. Isella, I hope I said that right. He was so kind to me when I did my listener story. We had a nice chat before and after, which was lovely. My listener story was about my dad who'd passed not long before. Jeff wrote, I always laughed when he said, be patient, baby bird. I'll feed you.
I love that.
It also cracks me up because there was this one clip that I was listening to, and whenever I'm getting ready to say something, I'll always be like, Kelly, and then I'll say stuff. And Jerry used to do the same thing with Tracy, so he'd be like, Tracy. And the one time Tracy finally goes, will you stop saying my darn name? Carl wrote, I've always listened to Jerry and Tracy since the beginning and have got to see them at various events. I got to sit by Jerry at dinner every night during the last cruise and got to chat with him and really get to know him. He's an amazing human and I will truly miss him. Amber wrote, I first met Jerry and Tracy on the Hillbilly Stories Podcast cruise a couple of years ago. I found myself in an elevator with the two of them and was pretty sure they were annoyed. But when we finally met up again at the casino, Jerry was nothing short of kind, telling my boyfriend how strong I was for losing a son and husband. I was so grateful that Jerry saw me. I don't always show my cards, but Jerry saw me. What a kind, loving person Jerry is. I will never forget you, Jerry. You are so deeply in my heart, Tracy. Love you both. I hope this is how you say this next name, Sequoia. I got to be on the show earlier this month when I shared stories about my dad. It was the third time Jerry had me on the show. I appreciate that I got to tell him how much I love him and Tracy during that recording. After sharing my story, he told me it was one of his favorite stories of all time. I can't even describe how I felt in that moment. So happy I got to share that with him. Carly wrote, the only time I ever met Jerry was at Bobby Mackey's. I was waiting in line to purchase his book when he patted me on the back. I turned around and he hugged me and said hi. Turns out he thought I was someone else, LOL. Once he realized I wasn't who he thought I was, he laughed and apologized, but I was just happy to be in his presence. He put off a vibe that was so comforting and understanding. David shared, I've talked with Jerry a few times on Messenger and I really appreciate how genuine he is and how he would always have time to chat with his listeners about real life stuff. Joel shared, I met Jerry only once by chance. We were both in the parking lot of a hotel in Gatlinburg and we struck up a conversation like we'd known each other for years. So sorry to hear of his passing. Mary wrote, I've been a fan of his since he was the Rent Daddy and he was doing stand-up comedy. He was so funny. He and Tracy were always so kind and grateful to have his fans there. Conrad shared, I still quote him to this day. When Tracy started asking too many questions, he'd say, hold on, little birdie, I'll feed you. And I hope that goes up there with every other gift he's given to listeners. Bonnie commented, I cannot explain the joy they gave my mom who passed from stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I had their podcast on when she was called home. She just so enjoyed listening, whether it was a road trip or a hospital trip. The many, many hours after chemotherapy, they were there. I sent a prayer to Mom to meet her favorite podcaster at the gates. The comfort she received is beyond words. Much love to you all. Jerry will be deeply missed in many ways. Again, my deepest condolences and thanks. Lindsay shared, I can't remember the episode, but they were talking in the beginning of the episode, and Jerry said, thank you for being my wife. You could hear Tracy crying happy tears, and I cried right along with Tracy because it was so sweet. I love the love for each other. And Kirsty concurred that she loved hearing that. Kyle shared, this handwritten letter to my son, who's a huge fan of the show, just became that much more meaningful. It's actual proof that Jerry took personal pride in all of his fans. You will not only be remembered as a podcast host, but as a dear friend. R.I.P. Jerry. My son will keep this letter from Jerry and Tracy close to his heart. Russell shared, Jerry didn't know it, but he was my fire axe behind glass. If mental health issues got bad, I had a deal with myself that I was to talk to him before doing anything stupid. I love that description, fire axe behind
definitely.
glass. There's got to be a visual for that somewhere.
I mean, that's definitely what he was for so many people.
Yeah. Even though I'd only spoken to him once over Messenger about tickets to his show, I knew he'd be there day or night as an unbiased support system to pull me out of whatever state I was in. I don't think I need my fire axe anymore, but I sure wish he was still here. Christy wrote, we met Jerry and Tracy at Tomball, Texas at a podcast event in May of 2019. We all stayed at the same hotel. Our impression was that Jerry and Tracy were good people. We pray that Jesus welcomed Jerry into his kingdom and to wrap his arms around Tracy to comfort her in this troubling time. Yeezus wrote, after I had a breakdown, a friend recommended podcasts to me as a way to relax my brain and unwind. The first podcast I ever listened to was episode 124 of Hillbilly Horror Stories, The Wendigo. I was hooked. Jerry and Tracy were my introduction to the world of podcasts, and I'm still listening to this day. They gave me my love for this medium. Jerry was the kindest soul. He always had great advice, always replied, and he always genuinely seemed happy to hear from you. He was a once-in-a-generation talent in podcasting who touched all of our lives. Rest in peace, big man. Thank you for all the magic. Shelby wrote, may you explore the paranormal and unknown soul side with as much passion as you did earth side. Don't forget to make my lights flicker and my podcast mic act up. Rest in the paranormal.
Oh.
You better haunt the heck out of us, Jerry. Carrie wrote, Jerry Paulley, our hearts are broken. You were a wonderful client, friend, historian, paranormal enthusiast, and storyteller. I loved being on your show. I know that you're with all of your animals and family you love so dearly. Tracy, I love you to pieces, and I'm always here for you when you're ready to communicate. My sincerest condolences. Joshua shared, Jerry, you're loved and will be missed. Thank you. At my lowest point in life, I was going through a very tumultuous divorce. For those 6 months of court, I had Jerry, Tracy, their family to give laughs and good stories and a little love in my ear while trying to keep myself together at work and in life. Thank you guys for being there for us listeners, and you will both always be loved. I'm so saddened for your loss. This is a name that's written in a different language, so I don't know how to say the name, but Jerry was one of the kindest and most understanding people I've ever talked to. He advised me on my podcast and was so supportive when I had a hard time in life. I don't go on Facebook much, however, I had to say this. The world lost one of the good ones, and my heart goes out to Tracy and her family. May Jerry rest in peace. Charlotte shared, I've thought all day about what to say, and there really are no words to adequately express what Jerry meant to all of us here, but also to the world. Who could have predicted the impact that would come from a guy who just wanted to tell jokes and a ghost story? Wow, that's so well put, Charlotte.
Definitely.
This group, the countless thousands upon thousands of people who've heard the stories, read Jerry's book, the people who've connected from all walks of life, not to mention the other podcasts he mentored, it truly shows how one person has the potential to change so much. Listening to Jerry and Tracy was like sitting on your granny's porch swing, hearing aunts and uncles swapping stories. Just a homey feel where everyone was included. The love Jerry and Tracy shared was evident, and they extended that love to everyone they met, it seems. They've been there for so many. May that legacy live on in each of us. My deepest sympathies to Tracy and all of their close family and friends. You are truly loved. Bailey, who joined us for our investigation at the Dixie House and is also the host of the No More podcast. My uncle from a different family passed away today. He made me laugh, made me cry, and led me to finding the job I'm in now, whether he knew it or believed it or not. Jerry wasn't my uncle literally, but he had the love that an uncle would give. My heart goes out to Tracy and the Hillbilly Horror Stories group family. We lost a legend today, but at least he's going to be doing what he loved talking about, haunting people.
He better.
Gerald wrote, I was absolutely devastated when I heard the news this morning. Jerry had such a great soul. He was always willing to take time out of his day to talk. He was a mentor and a friend. Hell, I listened to them so much he and Tracy felt like family. Fly high, my friend. Clear a path for all of us. Hopefully you're getting answers to all the questions you've ever had. R.I.P. brother till we talk again. Suzanne shared, Jerry, I will miss you, but your legacy lives on in your podcast. I will treasure all your episodes. Tracy, we're all here for you. Anything you need? So sorry for your loss. And she'd also shared how, these podcasts become like family for everybody.
Right.
Heather wrote, I was in a dark place in my life when I discovered Hillbilly Horror Stories 7 years ago. Even saying it was 7 years ago is crazy. Time goes by so fast. Jerry and Tracy always made me feel better and talked about things that were so interesting to me and made my interest in the paranormal not seem so unusual. I talked with Jerry a few times over the years, got recommendations for haunted places to visit in certain cities I traveled to, shared my personal experiences with the paranormal, and my best friend even met Jerry and Tracy for me at the Mothman Festival one year when I couldn't go because I was pregnant. I'm absolutely heartbroken that he is no longer with us. My heart hurts for all the fans he helped save the lives of. that he took extra time to talk to when they needed it, and most of all for Tracy. Henriette wrote, Uncle Jerry, I love you. I wasn't ready to lose you. Thank you for always being there for me when I needed to vent. I'm going to miss you so much. I know you're with Jesus and the angels. Don't worry, I'll take care of Aunt Tracy. R.I.P. Uncle Jerry, you will be so missed. Justin of Mysterious Circumstances shared, my friend Jerry passed away this morning. My heart hurts for Tracy and the rest of his family. He was such a genuine human being, so funny, and would always help anyone if they needed it. He was such a good, loyal friend. I just can't believe it. Jim Harold of the Paranormal Podcast shared, I logged on this morning to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, but was shocked and saddened to hear that Jerry Paulley from Hillbilly Horror Stories has passed. We've lost a very kind soul who always put his community first. God bless Jerry, Tracy, and family. Another reminder at this time of the year to be grateful for the time we have with our loved ones. It is all so short. The guys over at the Brohio Podcast shared, Jerry, you were our first friend in this podcast game. You took us under your wing and always thought of us. We traveled the country together. We traveled the world together. We will never forget you. We will always be thankful for our time together. We lost one of the best today. See you on the other side, Jerry Paulley. I want to share some of the thoughts from some of his comedy people as well. Les wrote, damn, just found out my comedy brother, Jerry Paulley, a.k.a. the Rent Daddy, passed away today on Thanksgiving. Please keep his wife and family in your thoughts and prayers. Keep him laughing in heaven, Jerry, until I make it in. He always told me I'd be the one to make it big. Ed wrote, I've been checking in on Jerry's Facebook page the last few days since I learned he'd collapsed in a parking lot outside a convention in Florida. I had faith that Jerry would pull through and make a full recovery, and for a minute it seemed like he would do just that. My condolences to his wife Tracy, Jerry's family, and to all who knew and loved him. I came to first know him as the Rent Daddy in the early 2000s, when he entered into the stand-up scene here in Louisville, and he very quickly climbed into the big leagues, sharing stages with major players like Bruce. Jerry kissed fame, but he remained grounded and a likable guy. I'd lost touch with him in recent years, but I knew he was doing very well in the world of podcasting with his Hillbilly Horror Stories. Jerry had a hustle, and he had a business savvy that I only wished I possessed. He was going to be successful no matter what he tried. I wish I'd tapped into his mind more and gotten some pointers. R.I.P. Rent Daddy, you'll be missed. Earl wrote, I remember the first time I met Jerry Paulley. It was at the Comedy Caravan in Louisville, Kentucky. We were at an open mic night, and he was slinging some word salad on stage. I had the unfortunate task of following him that night. Lucky for me, my set must have been respectable because he got me booked on one of his shows shortly after. That's the kind of dude he was. Always giving, always trying to help someone out, always looking out for his fellow man-woman. At the Caravan, I met the Rent Daddy. As life progressed, Jerry transcended the moniker and became much more to so many people. But Jerry never changed. He was still just him. Jerry, may the angels in heaven guide you to your eternal home, and may the Lord welcome you with open arms. And Tracy, may the Lord wrap his arms around you and comfort you during this time. And may he comfort the whole family, each of you and us, as we fondly think of Jerry and the impact he had on so many people's lives. Rest in peace, old friend. And there are countless more that I could share. He really did touch so many people.
Our hearts go out to Tracy and her and Jerry's combined families of children and grandchildren and their siblings and Jerry's father. We also extend our sympathies to the Hillbilly Horror Stories community that grew up around the podcast. Jerry was so very proud of it and often remarked about how rewarding it was and completely unexpected. We know that you will all continue to be there for each other and carry forward Jerry's spirit.
I know this wasn't much and certainly doesn't cover everything about Jerry and his life, but this was my way of giving my friend a proper send-off. I love you, Jerry Paulley, and I'm hoping you haunt the hell out of me. Is that possible? Well, Jerry, that's for you to decide. We want to thank all of you for joining us on this special In Memoriam for Jerry Paulley. A lot of people feel like, I wish there was something I could do. Well, there is. You can continue the spirit that Jerry started, help each other, take care of each other, and keep listening to Hillbilly Horror Stories. Listen to it over and over again because it is monetized and that money will continue to go towards Tracy.
Yes.
So just ask that you guys continue to do that. I want to thank you guys for joining us on this one. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now.
Bye-bye.